Welcome to No Apologies on Beck, where we are unafraid to speak the truth. I'm your host, Rick Becker, co-host Lori Hintz.
Hello there.
How are you? Welcome to Monday.
I'm great. It was the most spectacular North Dakota sunset tonight.
It was.
It was just the whole sky, everything from purples to oranges to pinks and blues. Just gorgeous.
Tonight's got to be in the top 10 for the year.
I think
but
so.
There are so many.
Just gorgeous.
So we've got a
North
great
Dakota.
show tonight. I know that you're very excited, as am I, for our special guest remoting in, Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. And we've got an executive order. So much tonight, folks.
Right.
So much for you. Tonight I wanted to start off with a discussion regarding concerns about a toxic environment in the legislature.
That's so interesting.
And the lack of civility. Right?
I've heard that word toxic several times
Yes.
recently. It's
Right.
funny that you said that.
So that's the word du jour.
Yes.
And so I think it's worthy of discussion because it's quite interesting in how it came about and really when you dig into it a little bit. So here's the scoop. We had, in what I guess turned out to be a very unusual move, the people I spoke to in the legislature had not seen this before, but Senator Pullman from Bismarck announced on the floor that she was retiring at the end of this term. And she cited several things, one of which, and seemingly maybe not one of the more important things, but one of which was a concern about the toxicity in national politics spilling into state politics and into the state house. So that was that, and that's fine. And then within a couple of days, a Democrat legislator, Senator Erin Oban, announced her retirement as well at the end of her term. But there she really did focus on a toxic environment, on divisiveness, on a lack of civility. And so from there, it just kind of, the media jumped on board, and now there's sort of like, whoa, crisis at the Capitol. And so I wrote a newspaper article on it. It's coming out in some of the papers this week. But I wanted to push back a little bit on it. Now, one of the things, we're going to talk about two things briefly. One of the things is that there isn't some new crisis at the Capitol with lack of civility. And the second thing is, and the most concerning, I want to make sure I'm bringing up here, what Senator Oban brought up, one of the things, one of her two primary things, is a concern and a feeling quite disheartened at the idea that some of her colleagues, primarily Republicans, were were caving in to grassroots pressure, to the movement, to, in other words, listening to their constituents.
Oh, God forbid.
Right. So, and that's what I want to point out is that, you know, seemingly for these many years now, it's been okay to comply or cave in, if you will, to special interests, to the governor, to state agencies.
Right.
And as long as they're acceptable special interests, it's okay. But now that if we want to say the group these grassroots are the deplorables, right?
Yep, triggered.
Now it's abhorrent that a state legislator would listen to this massive uprising in the state.
Isn't that interesting?
It is. And so I want to kind of call out that disparity, that bit of hypocrisy. And I encourage, I've said it before, I encourage our citizens to be vocal, to be active, because this is really a firestorm. It's been brewing for over a decade. It increased in 2016. It increased more in 2020. And the problem is that the status quo, establishment, progressive politicians aren't listening. They are tone deaf. They're not, because the people that are trying to hold them accountable, they view as the enemy.
I see. Right.
And so that's why would you listen to the enemy when you have all these other people that you should listen to? And there's a disconnect. And I think respectfully, what Senator Oban is exemplifying here is a disconnect. Now, arguably, these are not her constituents, as she's a Democrat. The people that are the grassroots trying to hold legislators accountable, by and large, are Republicans. But I think that it's very good, and we need people to stay engaged.
Agreed.
Now, this whole lack of civility in the legislature, I think, you know, it got heightened when we had the issue with Representative Luke Simons. That was a very divisive issue. There's no doubt about it. But this idea that we've entered a new realm that is causing people to retire and is preventing new good people from coming in, I think is manufactured. It's not real. And here's one of the things. I pointed out that in 2013, which was the same year one of those two retirees first came to the legislature, 2 years before the second one, we had to have a member of the House, a representative, apologize publicly on the floor to the House leader for calling him a Nazi. So the level of incivility certainly was just as much back then as it is now. And frankly, that's the way it's always been. There are these little breaches. It's no big deal. You course correct, you put people back on a path, you say, listen, there's a decorum here and we need to respect it. And I agree with that.
Have you ever watched the House of Commons?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I would love that.
Maybe what we should do is compare and contrast.
I would love that.
Bit.
I would, get out there and not catcall, whatever, heckle. That's what word I'm looking for.
Right, heckle. Nice try, though.
Catcall in House of Commons. But again, it comes down to the fact that the most important thing here, folks, is that you are making a difference. Grassroots, rising up, having their voice heard, holding their elected officials accountable, which is a new thing, at least in my lifetime.
You know what? It started with the Tea Party, Rick.
It did. It absolutely did.
And now it's bubbling up again, and people are realizing.
And it's not going to go away.
No,
eventually,
it's not.
politicians are going to have to realize these are not fringe radical people.
Yep.
These are the people that are in control of whether you get back in office or not.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, and I will encourage grassroots to take a civil tone, because the thing is, you especially on social media, we tend to be molded into this very aggressive, very vitriolic pattern, and we have to pull back and say, look, we're really talking here person to person. Or even if you're emailing, I strongly encourage civility. I strongly encourage a nice tone. I'd rather have someone involved and not be mindful of their tone than to not have them be involved. But keep in mind, these are real people. And if you are trying to make your voice heard, to try to get your point across, to try and help your elected official realize the best way to vote in their representation of their constituents, you're not going to do it by demanding and yelling and screaming and name-calling. So, as they say, you catch a lot more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah.
And so to further our own ends of furthering liberty, the principles of liberty and conservatism, I do encourage all of you, take a civil tone, treat your elected officials with respect, even if you do not respect some of their votes. Because remember, we can disagree without being disagreeable. We must not forget that. Above all, stay involved. I don't care what tone you take. Stay involved. You're making a difference. These next 2 years,
huge.
Everything. Everything.